Hi, this is David McCann for WebTNG. In this video, I want to talk about the WordPress REST API and two plugins. The first one is Disable WP REST API. It's developed by Jeff Starr, and it's a free plugin available in the WordPress plugin directory. The second plugin is the premium version of that called REST Pro Tools. So first, a little background. REST API stands for Representational State Transfer Application Programming Interface. So that's a geeky name if ever there was one. But what it does is that it's a standard for exchanging data over the web using HTTP. And REST has methods like get, post, put, patch, and delete. And usually the responses are JSON packets or XML packets, HTML, or even could be images. And there's something called endpoints or routes. And what those are basically URLs that are used to call a function on the website. And you can pass data to those URLs using variables, for example, in a URL or in a post. So it's quite powerful and popular, and it's used extensively in WordPress. The REST API was added to WordPress about 10 years ago. Now, one feature of the WordPress REST API, or bug, depending on how you look at it, is that there are a number of endpoints that are publicly accessible. So let me show you some of those. Here I have a testing site. It's using the 2025 theme. You can see I have some test demo posts. I have a couple of custom post types. I'm logged in this window. Let's open a window in an incognito mode, in private mode, so we're not logged in. And this website is on InstaWP, and we'll just call some of the REST endpoints to show you. So you see here are our posts here. I'm going to go ahead and paste in this endpoint, and you see as I edit the URL, it kind of drops down here so you can see it's on InstaWP. And here's a call to posts. Wow, we just dumped the post data here. A lot of thinking probably in making these routes public was that that data is available on websites anyway. So maybe it doesn't need to be private. Here's another example. It's a call to the media library. And yeah, here we've just dumped a bunch of information about images in our media library. Yes, that moves from posts now to media. Gets a little more sensitive. But you see how people could splunk around and maybe find information that you don't intend. Okay, so those are the posts and media. Here's another one that might get you on the same page as me. By default, the user's endpoint is also available. Okay, there's only one user on this site, me, but there's my information, a link to my Gravatar profiles and whatnot. This then starts to become kind of a little creepy or sensitive, and we know that hackers try to get the usernames from the site to help in hacking. So this is more sensitive information. Now, if we go to the WordPress developer docs on the REST API, here is a frequently asked question. Hey, can I just disable this? And they say, no, you shouldn't disable it because a lot of the WordPress admin functionality depends on the REST API, and Gutenberg does too. So they don't recommend disabling it. However, here they provide a code snippet that you can use to disable it for non-authenticated users. I want to point you to this note here that there are actually three options for the value, there's null, true, or false. And if you are coding your own and you return the wrong value, you could accidentally sidestep a check that WordPress core has. So if you're just doing something simple like disabling the REST API for visitors, code snippet like this is good, but if you're going to go in and get fancy, you need to know what you're doing. If you don't want to use a code snippet or you want to be more thorough, this is the Disable WP REST API plugin. The name is a little misleading because it only disables it for visitors. We can see it's got more than 30,000 active installs, and it disables the REST API for visitors. That's what that code snippet does. But it also removes the REST header from the responses sent to the browsers. It disables the links in the source code in the head of the HTML source code. So it also does some cleanup. As it says here, it's only 4K of code. So it's very efficient, lightweight. For a lot of users, maybe for clients, this plugin is going to be the way to go if you don't need access to the REST API on the front end. All right, now let's go back to our site. And let's go look at plugins. You see I have advanced custom fields. I have Fluent Auth, which protects the login form, among other things. I have an analytics plugin and a backup plugin. Let's go take a look at the settings for Fluent Auth. Just like the REST API, people know they need to disable XML RPC, so it has a feature for that. But it has two features to disable some REST API endpoints. You can actually use an application password, another vector, and then the user endpoint that we looked at just a minute ago. So let's turn those on and save. Let's go back to our testing site. This is the URL, the endpoint to dump user information. We see it returns an empty set. So it's taking care of that. Let's go try to get posts. It still shows the posts. Okay, so it's not locking down the REST API totally for visitors, just those specific security highlights. And that's probably thinking on the developer's part, doesn't want to cause problems for people who might need the REST API for the front end. So I'm going to turn these off so we can do some more experimentation here. I'll save this. Now let's try out the free plugin. So I'm going to add it and activate it, and that's it. There is no user interface. Let's go back to our testing, our incognito window. This is the call to dump posts, and we get the error message here that it's restricted to authenticated users. Same for users and the other REST endpoints. This is the easy way to disable the REST API for visitors. But we have this analytics program. Let's go see our analytics, our visitor stats. There's a error message here that says the Disable WP REST API plugin needs to be deactivated because Independent Analytics uses the REST API to record visits. And Independent Analytics isn't the only plugin that uses the REST API on the front end. So now we're in a situation where the blanket approach doesn't work. We go to the documentation for the plugin. They do have a code snippet here. And what that does is it says if the user is not logged in and you're not going to their REST API endpoint, then disable the REST API, return the error message. So it's kind of adding an exception. So this is similar to the WordPress org code snippet. And if you're doing something simple, you're a developer, or you're confident in your abilities, then you have this option. But I want to go now and look at the pro version of the plugin. Let's deactivate this. So let's add that plugin. I've downloaded it already. I'll activate it. So let's go to the settings, and we need to activate our license. So I'll paste in the license key, save, and activate. All right, and now here are the options. So these settings take priority and override other settings. See, these are kind of the high-level settings. You can disable the entire REST API. Maybe you're not using Gutenberg or any of the features of the REST API. And with all these drop downs, you have the option to do nothing, but don't disable, to do it for all requests or just for visitors. So disable the REST API, disable all routes, all or just for visitors, or do nothing. Disable user routes, exclude user IDs, IP addresses, customize the error message, the status code, enforce SSL or not, disable JSON-P, restore defaults. Okay, now here are more fine-grained options. You can manage access for user roles, and if there were custom user roles, they'd show up in this list. So visitors unauthenticated, complete access, but let's manage it granularly. And here's a list of all of the endpoints. This core embed, by the way, this was something that was exploited by that remote code execution exploit. Then here are endpoints added by the Fluent Auth plugin. You see, even if you shut down the core endpoints, plugins and themes can add their own. Here's the analytics endpoint. And then here are core endpoints. We see posts, pages, media, menu items, blocks, templates, navigation, global styles, font, our custom post types, statuses, taxonomies, categories, patterns, users, widgets. So a pretty big list here: site health, block editor, and the abilities API. Now, not all of these are public, okay, but I just wanted to show you there's the list of all the REST API endpoints. I want to disable them all and then just turn on the one that I need. Okay, that's the granular control. I'll save. And now let's go back to our analytics dashboard, and the error message is gone. So that's that granular feature. This is the way that you can enable the REST API just for some endpoints. Here are the headers that are sent in the browser related to the REST API. Like on the other tab, you can do it for all requests or just for visitors, or do nothing. Leave the default. Here are custom fields. ACF and Metabox, they use the REST API in the admin. And usually we use page builders or pro block collections to display the custom fields. But the ACF and Metabox have REST API options that you can use if you're programming it yourself. You might want to allow those. You can add post meta. You can allow or not user-related information. Maybe you're creating a front-end dashboard or something. And here are some meta fields, like from the custom post types that I created. Then here's extra data. the site profile, the author profile, featured image, the author image, categories, taxonomy terms. Okay, those are available in the REST API. Here are some testing tools, like a place where you can test. Here are links to the support forum or to contact the developer. And here is the on-site help. So this is very nice. We've discussed the REST API. We've done a walkthrough of the plugins. If you think that the free or the pro plugin would meet your needs, I am a big fan of Jeff Starr's plugins. I recommend them without reservation. If you're a developer or you're confident in your coding skills, there are code snippets if you're doing something simple. But the main takeaway from this video is that you should lock down the REST API for visitors, for unauthenticated users. That's the video. I hope you've gotten something useful out of it. If you did, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.